Hello and welcome to my first time-lapse build. Right off the bat, I lost some of the videos at the beginning of this process, so some still photos to show. These are some blueprints that I mocked up and then printed out and made skeletons for. I then cut out the rough shapes with a metal tooth handsaw and then hollowed out form for my skeleton. So I'm going to be narrating a little bit over the rest of this process, the video as it goes along, to explain sort of what I'm doing. Right here I'm taking that same metal-toothed handsaw from before and routing out the curves of the blades. I'm going to do this first to get the rough shape of the 3D form out, and then I'll go through afterwards and clean it up with some sandpaper. So now that I have all of my rough form cut out, I'm going to take some 60 grit sandpaper and just sort of follow those lines that I made with the saw with the 60 grit hand sanding in order to get a much smoother, closer to final shape. As you can see, I'm stepping through all of the grooves and just running up against the little points that I had left from the hand sanding. And this is when your XPS foam really starts to take close to final form. I prefer hand sanding, but you can use like a sanding block or anything else. Hand sanding works really well if you have organic sorts of curves to sort of mold and sculpt down the foam to that final shape that you want. After I do 60 grit, I run over everything with 220 usually, just to get a little bit smoother on all of the foam edges so that whatever you're going to seal it with, Warbler or Epsilon, like I'm doing here, you won't have any weird foam burrs or anything. Also, you can see on the side there, I added some indents to sort of give the piece more character just along the side of the spikes. So now I've mixed my Epsilon, which is a 2-part resin from Smooth On, and it's recommended that you mix it and then put it into some sort of tin foil container or something where it can spread out flat, because Epsilon is exothermic, so it will spread heat out. And if you keep it in the cup that you mix it in, it will get hard and unusable much more quickly than if you put it onto a flat surface so it can spread out. So what I'm doing now is basically just going through the inside that I had hollowed out and spreading my first coat of Epsilon there, as well as going along all of the edges on the bottom of the shape. Now I'm stepping into getting one of the sides done, and Epsilon works well to just sort of paint it on as you would like gesso or Mod Podge or most other sort of sealing liquid materials. Just the last thing to do with Epsilon when you're putting your sealing coat down is to, as it's drying or sort of when it's getting a little less liquid-like, just sort of run over your surfaces one more time with your brush, or a few more times as it's drying, and try to eliminate drips, because it's going to harden, and then anything that's dripping down you're going to have to sand down when you get to that point. So I lost some of the cleanup process here, but basically lots and lots of sanding, 60 to 220 grit, and then coming in and getting all of the deeper holes in the foam that the Epsilon captured and just applying some Bondo to that, and then sanding that smooth as well. So after that was all cleaned up and smoothed, after the Bondo and everything, I applied another coat of primer, and then I sort of stepped between using a rattle can dark blue, a metallic glittery blue, and a light blue. Try to hit different parts of the prop with different layering of that to get sort of a shimmer effect in certain lights, and then the sort of a darker towards the blade edge, and then a lighter towards the top tips. What I'm doing now is stepping through and trying to add a little more detail on certain edges of the prop with airbrushing details. I started off really lightly with just another type of blue, like a ghost tint blue, I believe it was, plasma fluid. I didn't really like how that was hitting. I didn't think it was getting as bright near the tips as the reference material is showing. So instead I came back through with a white and really brightened up the tips and the forward part of those angles. So I hit both props with that, and then I came back through with another blue on top of this white to sort of dull it down a little bit, as you can see here, because obviously the white is just blatant, and so I kind of merged that back through with a little more blue to try to tame that effect a little bit. So once I had cleaned that blue up, I stepped through and sort of marked out where I wanted my green slime to be with green marker on the prop itself. This was based pretty much on the vector blueprint that I had built before that was based off of a side view of the references, but I also expanded it a little bit more because that reference didn't quite capture the slime feel as I like, so I freehand a little bit as I was coming along. After I had my green marker lines down, I sort of traced those with green neon puffy paint, and that served as my edging for the slime. And I also made sure to put some puffy paint, not just on the lining, but in the inside of where the slime is actually going to be as well, to give it some more texture there. So you'll see some puffy paint lines up where the slime is going to be, just sort of smeared on, so that the end effect is much more like slime being thrown back from the blade, as opposed to just an odd etching of slime onto the blade. After I had my puffy paint lines down and they dried overnight, I came through with some neon green airbrush paint and sort of just traced those lines and filled the space as best I could. I had some bits of the slime that were not to be filled because they were going to show the blade underneath and give it a little bit more of a dripping effect. So this is basically just tracing over those puffy paint lines, both the green and the white that I ended up using to sort of as filler on some of those parts there, coming through and covering all of that up. Unfortunately, it didn't capture very well because of the way that I worked on it. But after I got this just sharp neon green down, I came back through with a other green ghost tint and green actual acrylic, and hit both sides with that to give it a little more texture. And here we have the finished blades. If you have any questions on the process at all, or just in general, shoot me a message over on my Facebook page. But other than that, thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you next time.